All right, speaking of cold, let's start with the first question of the day. So you guys sent that to us on Facebook, and so that's from Carol K. So Carol K on Facebook asks, "Hello Laura, thank you so much for all your videos, especially the female solo travel one. It is really inspiring." Look at that, you're inspiring. Can you tell me about the weather in July, please? Will it be cold? It will. All right. So what about we bring up our trusty map and we start talking about the weather in New Zealand?
Yeah. Shall I just get started with an introduction? So
go for it.
just so you guys know, July is right in the middle of winter in New Zealand, and yeah, so it is kind of the coldest time of the year to be traveling around New Zealand. But the plus side of that is that it's also the quietest time to be traveling around in New Zealand. There's far less tourists, so it often feels like you have the whole place to yourself. And on top of that, it's in the middle of the winter season where there's a lot of snow spots around New Zealand, so you could go skiing or snowboarding. That's definitely on the cards. But thing to note is that the temperature and the precipitation around New Zealand is usually quite different depending on whereabouts in the country you are. So we're going to bring out our map and go through some precipitation around New Zealand as well as some average temperatures, and Robin's going to...
Here you go. While Laura is getting ready with the map, I'm going to give you a few tips for traveling New Zealand in July before we get started. So first up, you've got to know that it's the low season in New Zealand, as Laura mentioned, so there's going to be less people and it's going to be a little bit cheaper, but that comes with a few things that you need to be aware of. If you're planning on driving around New Zealand in July, the weather can actually quite affect your driving quite a lot, and some roads may be closed due to excess snow. So you may want to check on the New Zealand Transport Agency, which is NZDT, and you may want to check on their website for all the roads updates in New Zealand. If you plan on going to any of the ski field or the mountainous areas, you will need to get yourself some snow chain. And also, if you do know how to drive in this kind of weather, that'd be a little bit better for you guys. For some of the great walk, most of them are accessible all year long, but there are also a few of them which should not be attempted in winter, especially without the proper gear. So I'm thinking about, around the Tongariro mountain, for example, which gets really cold. You need to have very good equipment, and sometimes there's even just, go with a guide. It's going to be easier. So that's just a couple of tips right here for you guys. And obviously, if you are planning on doing some activities which are extremely weather related, like some helicopter tours, for example, make sure to actually plan a couple of different locations where you're going to be doing. So let's say you want to do a glacier walk, you may plan Franz Josef and Fox Glacier. So if it's cancelled in Franz Josef on the day you're here, you always have a chance to do it in Fox Glacier. So keep that in mind. It's July in New Zealand, so there's a bit more unexpected. All right, now let's start talking about the weather itself. Enough of an introduction. We're going to be starting with the temperature, and I'm going to go through a lot of different regions around New Zealand and give you the average temperature in July. Then we're going to be talking about the rainfall, so you know where you're at. All right, let's get started with northern New Zealand, which include Northland, Auckland, and Tauranga. The average temperature is 11 degrees Celsius, which is 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Then central North Island, that's Hamilton, Taupo, and Rotorua. The average temperature is 7 degrees Celsius, which is 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the southwest North Island, which is New Plymouth, Palmerston North, and Wellington. So this whole area right here, the average temperature is 9 degrees Celsius, which is 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if we're talking about the eastern North Island, so that's Gisborne, Napier, and all the Wairarapa, still a typo on this one, every single one of the months. That's 9 degrees Celsius, 49 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm talking about a typo right now because I'm reading from our article, which is a weather in July, which we're going to be linking for you guys in the description below, so you can dive much more in depth into that subject. And I promise we will go and correct this typo for you. All right, let's move on to the South Island right here. Northern South Island, that's Blenheim and Nelson. That is 7 degrees Celsius, 47 Fahrenheit. Then we're having the Eastern South Island, that is Kaikoura, Christchurch, and Timaru. So all that big stripe right here, The average temperature is about 7 degrees Celsius, 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the Western South Island, that's everything from Westport, Hokitika, and even Milford Sound all the way down the bottom. That's between 5 and 7 degrees Celsius, which is 41 to 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Inland South Islands, so that's Lake Tekapo, Queenstown, and Alexandra. That is 1 to 3 degrees Celsius. That's when it starts getting really cold, so 34 to 37 Fahrenheit. And southern New Zealand, that's Dunedin and Invercargill, that's 7 degrees Celsius, 47 Fahrenheit. So that's the average temperature that you can expect around New Zealand in July. Now, what about rainfall? Because New Zealand, well, you know, is known to have quite a lot of rain. So let's have a look at the rain in July. We're going to go through the same region. North Island, so northern New Zealand, Northland, Auckland and Tauranga, that's about 150 millimeters of rain. Central North Island, which is Hamilton, Taupo and Rotorua, it's 110 millimeters of rain. Southwest North Island, which is New Plymouth, Palmerston North and even Wellington, that's 140 milliliters of rain. Eastern North Island, which is Gisborne, Napier and Wairarapa, has about 90 millimeters of rain. Then we're having the northern South Island, which is Blenheim and Nelson. That's 90 millimeters of rain. Then we have having the eastern South Island, Kaikoura, Timaru and Christchurch, which is 80 millimeters of rain. Now brace yourself for the wild west coast of New Zealand. So around this area where you have Westport, Hokitika and Milford Sound, there is always the highest rainfall in the country. So this one is between 250 and 450 millimeters of rain. So that's the every month of the year is the highest amount of rain, but it's also one of the most beautiful places in the country. So yeah. Inland South Island, that's Lake Tekapo and Queenstown and Alexandra. It's only 20 to 50 millimeters of rain. That's because there is a lot of snow as well, and that's not as different. And southern New Zealand, Dunedin and Invercargill, you have 70 millimeters of rain. So here you go. That's basically what kind of weather you can expect in July. Now, in July, the best places to visit in New Zealand are Queenstown, because, well, it's like where you can do all the ski fields and all those kind of things. Northland right here, because this is where you're going to get most of the good weather and awesome weather. Now, despite the high amount of rain, we also have Franz Josef, if you're on the point on the map, just because the glaciers are unmissable, and especially in this kind of months, you know, there's usually a bit more snow and everything, so it makes everything look like just a blanket of snow. It's quite fantastic.
And it also doesn't have as many tourists there because Franz Josef is a really small town, so in summer it does feel really busy, but in winter it feels so much more relaxed, so much more quiet, so it's a good time to go.
We also love Tekapo, just because there is some awesome hot springs that are completely covered under the snow. It's just like Instagram perfect kind of places to go to. And also we also love Rotorua and Taupo because there is all the geothermal activity, all the warm weather. All the warm weather comes from the ground, which is quite cool. So we do really like it. All right, and finally, a couple of things to pack if you're traveling in New Zealand in July.
Okay, so like I mentioned, it is winter, so you will need to pack some warm clothing, like a beanie or a scarf is a good idea. And because, as you heard from all the precipitation that may occur during this time, it's always a good idea to have a rain jacket. That's actually a really good waterproof rain jacket. Some warm mid layers, so that's kind of like, your hoodies or your fleeces, something that you can take on and off. It's always good to have an extra mid layer. Some thermal underlayers, so this could be like your sort of tight merino wool layers are really popular in New Zealand, and if you can't get them back home, you can certainly get them when you arrive in New Zealand. Woolen socks, that's usually a lot more effective than cotton socks, and if cotton socks get wet, then they're really uncomfortable to wear, whereas wool is just generally a better material for colder months. Waterproof hiking shoes, again, if it starts raining, wet feet is usually quite a misery, or at least I think so. So having some waterproof shoes is always good. And swimwear, because believe it or not, you still will want to get in the water in the middle of winter in New Zealand, but more preferably for the hot pools that are all around and not really for swimming in the sea.
All right, so thank you very much for watching this video. If you guys have any questions, make sure to put them in the comment below so we can answer them during our next live session. And if you do want to dive deeper into the New Zealand weather in July, make sure to check the link in the description below, which sends you to an article with much more information.